PC gamers like freedom in their games, in all its forms. Whether it's the freedom to customise their graphics and controls, the freedom to mod their game, or games that provide freedom of choice in gameplay styles, PC gamers just like freedom. And that makes Project I.G.I an archetypal PC game, because it's a game with an awful lot of freedom. By which I mean it has big maps, ridiculously big maps. They are as far on the other end of the spectrum from the corridor shooter as you can possibly get. Literally, most of the levels are just huge, wide open plots of land. And this scale facilitates some pretty unique and thrilling gameplay. On the second level, for instance, there's this compound with a helicopter pad in the middle of a valley surrounded by SAM launchers. Your goal for the level is to just find some explosives, disable the SAM launchers, and extract via helicopter. And you're just put in this massive open environment and given this objective and left to it. You can sneak in or stealth some and do your business. You can trek over to a watchtower, take out the guard and start sniping, or you can just rush in and start busting heads. Although this is predominantly a stealth shooter, there's a variety of gameplay styles available to you thanks to this huge environment and the unusual style of the mission objectives. They aren't about simply moving from one end of the map to the other, they're more about moving back and forth within each level, each of which may be described as a miniature open world. And you have some funky surveillance tools to help you out. You have some binoculars with amazing zoom and Far Cry style enemy tagging, which is nice, but the game lacks a minimap to fully exploit tagging. Instead you have something much better. You have command of a satellite giving you this fully zoomable Google Maps style overhead view of each level. You can zoom out to see almost the entire level, none of them will fit on a single screen, or zoom in so close you can watch enemy patrols. It's a tool that helps you plan out where you want to go and how you want to conduct your business. And because it's presented through a separate screen rather than being a minimap, you have to play in your environment rather than play in your minimap like in Metal Gear Solid for instance. You can load up your satellite view whenever, but you always have to come back to the gameplay to act, and act based on what's in the game environment rather than watching your radar. Running around in Metal Gear Solid watching the radar as much as or more than the actual field of play was awful, but we did it anyway because the game was designed for us to do that. Project I.G.I takes the idea and executes it properly, and the vast scale makes it brilliant. But there is a vital piece of the puzzle missing: quality AI. Despite the manual's claim to the contrary, it can't hear, or at least its hearing is very selective as it does seem to respond to some things. But this means you can fire shots right by it and it won't respond. And this also means you can kill a guy standing next to another guy, and unless you're seen doing it, the surviving AI may not even react. This makes stealth, even though it's something the game encourages strongly, something that just doesn't feel natural, and I.G.I is completely incapable of competing with the stealth titles of the day. But this is still a stealth game after a fashion. While the AI stands around like silly sausages while you're stealthing, it's serious business when a fight breaks out. The AI is not especially impressive here either, as for instance its pathing is ridiculous at times and you can actually get them stuck running back and forth between 2 points by repeatedly adjusting your position slightly, as the AI clearly has predetermined firing locations relative to where you're standing. It'll often run to one of these positions before firing, even though it has an easy shot at the time, giving you time to gun it down. It also has a habit of firing in short bursts with a moderate pause in between, so you can draw its attention, run behind cover as it fires at you, and then emerge to kill it during one of these predictable, safe pauses, provided your cover wasn't something that could be shot through, of course. That's right, you can shoot through thin walls in this game. This is fairly common today, but Project I.G.I was the first game I played that did it, and even if it wasn't the first ever to do it, it was certainly rare enough at the time that it was still pretty amazing. That said, the game doesn't exploit the idea very much at all, which is a pity as there's some interesting gameplay potential in it. Bullets also apparently ricochet off metal surfaces, but I only know that at all because it says this on the box, and may not even be true given that at least one half truth is printed in the manual. So yeah, the AI is problematic, but what more or less nullifies all of these AI problems and makes them formidable in combat is that you die very easily. You take quite a lot of damage when shot, and healing items are extremely rare, not very effective, and usually require exploration to find them in the first place, though they're mostly found in logical places such as first aid stations, which is quite wonderful. What's especially cool about the healing item is that it's an ammo-based item you carry around, healing as little or as much as you need within your ammo limit. This means no health is wasted when healing, which is clever design that fits well with the style of the game. If you're sick of regenerating health cover shooters, this is about as far in the opposite direction as you can get. Oh, and just wait until you come up against a tank. These monsters can only be hurt with anti-tank weaponry, and surprisingly authentically you need a rear or side shot to put them down. It's genuinely scary. And if I'm making the game sound rock hard, then here comes the sticky cum shot. There's no mid-mission saving. Many, maybe even most, would say this is a bad thing, but like fuck it is. This is a game about clinical planning and patience and surveillance, and when dying means restarting right back at the start, you play it the way it's meant to be played, or you puss out and quit during mission 3. You're forced to play the game properly using your binoculars and satellite and so forth, but in doing so it becomes extremely tense, even scary, and that's very appropriate. With one single gameplay mechanic, the entire rest of the game clicks into place in a way it couldn't if you could just hit F5 before risking your life. This potentially makes it quite trial and error-ish as you die, learn from your mistake, and do it right on the 2nd or 3rd or 10th try. And I've seen the game criticised for that, but it's rarely the fault of the game if this is happening. There are definitely a few instances where the game springs something on you that's really hard to avoid and you have good cause to be pissed off at those moments. But for the most part, if you're reduced to trial and error, it's simply because you're not playing the game properly. This is a game that should be played with a very slow, considered pace, and that should be obvious almost immediately while playing the game. But it's not as cruel as it sounds, as the levels are over pretty quickly. You should be able to do most of them within 10 minutes if you know what you're doing, and sometimes much less than that, making replaying after dying not nearly as tedious as some might want you to think. As wonderfully huge as the levels are, there's nothing in them for the most part besides enemy buildings. There's the odd tree here and there, and the terrain is a mixture of flatland, hills and hillocks, which quite enjoyably and possibly uniquely can actually be scaled. There's no, oh, this hill's at a 45-degree angle, yes I can scale a moderate incline and have to find another way around business in this game. But the environments are utterly barren. At the time of the release, the sheer scale was impressive enough that you wouldn't notice it, really. And even today, it's remarkable to zoom in on someone so far away and blow his brains out with the Dragunov. But it's glaringly problematic just how empty the environments are, and Operation Flashpoint just a few months later really put it in its place in that respect. The levels are just utterly empty and lifeless, and besides some occasional variety like snow levels, it's just lazy and there's no excuse. Other stealth elements include cameras and alarms. The AI will run over to an alarm button if one's nearby and activate it if you're spotted, causing reinforcements to endlessly spawn from guard stations until you hit an alarm button, making getting caught a massive shit your pants moment. But if you don't know where the nearest alarm button actually is, it can be extremely frustrating, as finding these little things in these huge environments is just really hard. The alarms also go off if you're caught in a camera's field of vision for more than a few seconds, System Shock 2 style. But they'll also go off if a guard is killed on camera, which was a pretty clever touch for the time. These cameras can be destroyed, but they can also be disabled temporarily. One really cool element, which I recall thinking was pretty incredible at the time of release, was that you have what the game calls interaction points throughout the levels. You've got doors, of course, and ladders, with ladders being scaled realistically, albeit far too slowly, which is shown in third person, which is annoying but useful. You're very vulnerable when on a ladder, so you have to think before climbing something, though the benefits of a high vantage point ought to be clear enough based on what I've said so far. More importantly, you can also hack computer terminals and keypads, which is done simply by holding the action button. All you do is hold the action button, but it takes a while to do, and while you're doing it you're totally vulnerable, which is tense unless you've cleared the area of guards. And it also allows you to open locked doors and temporarily disable security cameras. You can also scale fences not topped with barbed wire, though these are really rare, and you can also quickly travel by sliding down wires. These moves often open up new routes through the environment. This is one of the cooler overall elements. Within enemy compounds you'll sometimes find that moving around is effectively linear, thanks to fences, but you're regularly given multiple routes to get to your objectives inside compounds. In one instance you may be able to take the long way around by going to a building, and along the way take out a sniper in his nest without him being able to get you. Or the alternative may be a quicker route, but one that takes you straight through the sniper's line of sight. These multiple routes lend the game an element of discovery and exploration, and play well with your satellite tool. Being able to pick and plan your movement even within linear compounds is really great. I normally detail the story or scenario in my second paragraph, but I just don't really think it's even worth talking about in Project I.G.I. You play as a British soldier with an American techie offering assistance through voice messages. It's something to do with a stolen nuke and something about Russia, but I find that sort of Tom Clancy-esque drivel utterly intolerable. And even with that said, it's an obviously poor execution in Project I.G.I. I.G.I is probably a game that most people wouldn't like, but I can say that in spite of some obvious AI flaws, I still adore the game and find the absence of mid-mission saving, which seems to have been widely criticised, to be the glue that binds the rest of the game together. If you're not into potentially repeating content, or don't think you can handle the slow pace, or the AI just sounds a little too dodgy, this probably isn't a game for you. But if you're sick of all of these regenerating health cover shooters with checkpoints every 30 seconds, you've just got to try Project I.G.I.